is Keith.
Hi, Keith.
I'm a child of God, and I celebrate recovery from pornography, sexual addiction, drug and alcohol abuse, and rage. In Principle 8, we say that we want to yield ourselves to God to be used to bring this good news to others, both by my example and by my words. And in step 12, we say, having had a spiritual experience as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and practice these principles in all of our affairs. My name is Keith. I celebrate recovery from rage and addiction. I stand before you cleansed and holy and pure in God's sight. He's the King of Kings. He's the Lord of Lords, and I will always try to please him the rest of my life. This is my story. Many hours of my life have been spent pretending to be someone else, just like you saw. I've even played God multiple times in my life, no pun intended. Sometimes it's much easier that way because you don't have to face the real story. My life's had many ups and downs, most of them self-inflicted, good and bad ways. So let's just be clear, Celebrate Recovery made an impact on my life, and I'll never be the same. It's become a tool in my tool chest that keeps me on track with being a righteous man and not a self-gratifying one. So let me give you a little snapshots of my life. My father, my earliest memory of him is with a glass of brown liquid in his hand. I'm not going to say a whole lot about him because he wasn't involved in my life much. He became a phone call and a check to me. My parents divorced before I was 5. We moved from Michigan down to Texas. Mom eventually remarried my stepfather, Bill. He was master sergeant of 25 years. I was a rebellious, argumentative child with authority problems. It's not going to go over well. We were in a bad situation. My mother had been trying to play 2 roles in the house for many years, and we manipulated her to get what we wanted. We'd make her guilty as heck when she didn't give us what we wanted. Bill came in the picture. He was an alpha male, had tons of control issues. Bill loved me in his own way, but he was an Air Force guy, and I was me. We were kind of like oil and water. So the next 10 years of my life, I can remember most arguments, yelling, whippings. I got whipped for something different every day. I thought that was progress, since at least it was something different. Feel free to laugh at some of the bad jokes, it's okay. It didn't have to be with a paddle, though. Bill would whip me with whatever was in his hand. It could be a garden hose, it could be a rake handle, whatever was in his hand at the time that I offended his sensibilities. I grew up really being forced to go to church because that's what my family did. Pentecostal church is where I was raised, and that's hellfire and damnation. And that's what was preached. So in my home, we would have knockdown, drag-out fights at home, and then we would knock down, drag-out fights on the way to church in the car. And then when we hit the parking lot of the church, we'd open the doors and balloons and rainbows and puppy dogs would come out of the car because we had to put on a face that everything was okay. But inside we were dying. I thought I was a sinner. I thought I was going to hell, so I might as well put on a show. I got baptized when I was 12 and I experienced the Holy Spirit for the first time, but at that point in my life, I'd already been looking at pornography since before 3rd grade. I had friends' fathers that had stashes of magazines and videos, and pornography became a struggle for me most of my life. I didn't know what a relationship with Christ looked like, but I knew it in theory. I thought getting baptized would fix the other problems in my life. But I was a real people pleaser. I could get validation by doing crazy stuff. I would feel good about myself doing those crazy things. I would act out in school. I would be the class clown. I would do crazy stuff so I could just make people laugh. I would do things with my friends that were wrong because we were bored and we liked the rush. I would steal, kill, and destroy anything that my friends wanted to. Any kind of validation that I could get. Athletically, I was gifted, and I started getting noticed by people because of my athletics. And I made a vow that I would always try to be the best at every sport I played. I would try to be the best so people would talk about me and how great I was. It didn't matter if we won or lost, as long as I was noticed as being the best. Looking back on my life, and especially that period of time, I was just desiring to have a father that loved me and to be validated in my life as a young man. I would do bad things, and in my heart knew what I was doing was wrong, but doing it anyway because my friends wanted to. I got horribly drunk the first time with my buddies when I was 16. At 17, I got arrested for breaking and entering into automobiles and was facing up to 5 years in jail. By the grace of God, I got 100 hours community service and was put on probation for 6 months. I served my community service at a church called Kensington. And I got involved in the production team. I fell in love with the acting ministry. I saw a skit where a husband and wife were having just a knockdown, drag-out fight on a couch on the stage. And then the pastor came up after that moment and sat on the couch and said, "What does the Bible say about this?" And I was captivated. I said, "I want to do that." So I tried out for the drama team and I made it and did a couple of skits, but then my mom got divorced from Bill when we were 17, and that's the last time I went to church for a very long time. I started drinking regularly when I was 18. It was only 18 to drink across the border in Louisiana. There was a lot of deaths before they changed those laws. I did about a year of college, and I realized it wasn't for me. And I was waiting tables at a restaurant called Bennigan's. Mom got me married to a guy named Ronnie, and it was at this point that I decided I could move away and live my own life. I was 19 at the time. Somebody could take care of my mom. I could bounce. So I moved back up to Michigan to start my own life. I tried to engage with my father in a relationship, but it just it didn't seem to work out. I lived with him for a short period of time when I moved back up, and then I lived out of my truck because it was easier for a period of time before I moved in with my brother. But it was at this point that I really started to party hard. I had a bunch of 20-something friends that would get beer, and that's where my life of sex, drugs, and rock and roll started. I moved to LA and lived with my girlfriend at the time, and when we broke up, I really started in on the drugs. It was really about everything that could give me pleasure and to fill that hole. Something was still missing. It was fun, but it wasn't complete. Every drug you can imagine, I tried it. I dealt drugs for a period of time and wasn't very good at it because I would use my stash. Financial backing of the restaurant equipment business I was working at, found out they were Israeli mafia and that they were laundering money through the business. So I got in an argument with my friend who was actually my boss at the time, and I quit. And so what do you do when everything's going south? Call my mom. I remember calling my mom. I was on the side of the road crying at a payphone. And this was the late 90s, so no cell phones back then. It was at that point I hit my low. I remember my mom saying, you need to go back to church. You need to get back to mission. You need to get back involved with Kensington. Get your life straight with God. Find a good woman. She was right in everything. And so I gave everything I owned to my roommate, and I left California the same way I'd come, with my golf clubs and my clothes in the car. My trip back to Michigan I see as kind of a turning point in my life. I knew I couldn't stay in California. I was stoned all the way back to Michigan, through every state. That was the very first week I was back. I went to Kensington. And I was afraid the church would burn down around me when I walked in. You have to picture me at the time, so I had hair. I had bleached blonde highlights, 2 earrings, and a tongue ring. And I was pimped out like you dress in California. You dress out really nice, and I'm strolling on into the church. And I remember Pastor Dave Wilson, he was talking about God and where is God in our life. And he made a statement. He said, pull out your daytime. And at that time, the Franklin Covey Daytimer was the thing, right? That was the thing. You didn't have the calendar on your cell phone. You had a piece of paper and you wrote everything down. And I was a businessman in my own eyes. So I pulled out my Daytimer, and he's like, I'm ready to take notes. And he said, look in there, and I want you to ask yourself, how come God isn't in there? And what I realized is that the last 10 to 15 years of my life, God was always there. But I wasn't allowing him to be involved in my life. I wasn't allowing him into my life. I went to California and I destroyed my life. The whole time he just wanted to be in a relationship with me, and I didn't get it. I didn't understand that the whole time he was just reaching out his hand. And I was down in the pit of despair and loneliness, on the drugs and self-pleasing the whole time. And he had his hand out, and all I had to do was just reach out and take it and have strength to get over some of this stuff. And I was barely holding it together during the church service. I went to my car and I just wept bitterly. That's all well and good, but my roommate was with me, and he's my future business partner. And he freaked out. He was like, what's going on? This guy's crying in the car. But I really told him that, what had happened in my life, and I gradually started turning things over to God in my life. So my career was the first thing. I started my own business, and it was make it or starve. So I had to kind of give it over to Him. And then my relationships, I would meet someone, and I would say, Jesus, if this is not the person for me, get her out of here. He was always faithful with that. Within a week or two, they would end it, or I would end it for some reason. That's until I met Debbie. She wasn't my type, I wasn't her type, but we connected on a soul level. We both came from a very damaged past, had a lot of pain to go through yet, but I knew she was the one. We decided to get married early, so we got married in Texas when my stepfather died. My mother's husband that I had left back years ago, he got hit by a train in his truck and became a quadriplegic. And he lived for 9 years after that, and he died. My mom was the only witness to the wedding. We didn't tell anybody because we didn't want to ruin the wedding for them because we were doing it early. And my brother was the pastor for that, and he married us. I didn't tell him until years later that it was fake. Hey, you know that first wedding you ever did in your life? I was already married. Just saying, I didn't sign the certificate. That was kind of funny. He's like, why didn't you tell me? I'm like, well, it was your first wedding. I didn't want to ruin it. So not long after that, we got pregnant with our first son, and we got devastating news. He had something called an occipital encephalocele. He also had something called a two-vessel umbilical cord. So basically, he had a hole in his skull, and his brain was growing outside of his head. And so when you look at the ultrasound, it looked like he had two heads. And so that was the first time in my life I never thought I would have to face the subject of abortion. And they really tried to talk us into aborting him, doing him a favor. He was going to have no quality of life. If you do this for him, that's humanity. He's just going to be a vegetable. And we had the choice of taking his life or not. And that's when we really started realizing your life is not in your control. Life is not in my control. I can't control these types of situations. I got on my knees and I said, God, my child is yours. And I put him on the altar. Nathan lived, and he's had 7 or 8 brain surgeries up to this point. He has a seizure disorder. But boy, can he play the piano. And he graduated to be a junior this year. So what do they know? So 2 years into our marriage, we weren't really doing well. We were arguing all the time, and Nathan was a special needs child. The stress was really mounting, and I had to get away for a bit. So I went to California for a weekend to party and just kind of forget about my woes. While I was gone, Nathan had a seizure and a shunt malfunction. He had to be resuscitated multiple times. He almost died. I wasn't there for him. And I wasn't there for Debbie because I was partying in California. And I felt so helpless and useless, and really was for the most part. Shortly after his birth, my father died. He got drunk, he fell and hit his head, and he never recovered, went into a coma, and then died. And I remember sitting at his funeral in Atlanta with my brother, and there was only a few people in the room, and it was just sad that I never knew him. Never knew who he was. And I also found out that I had an uncle and family that I never knew because he got in a fight with my uncle before I was born. And I realized how much rage and anger came from my father, and I was glad at his funeral that he wasn't in my life. I feel like God blessed me in that way to keep me away from some of the stuff that I probably was going to be exposed to there. I was going through the motions. We were attending church. I was serving on the drama ministry. It was at that point that my relationship with God started to become just that, a relationship. As Debbie and I and the family were learning to do life together, we started having kids, and Debbie was making more money than me. She was a nurse. I had my own IT consulting business. And Debbie had said that she didn't want to work as much anymore because she wanted to start homeschooling the kids. So this is the first time I ever humbled myself in front of God and said, Lord, provide me with a job and I'll take it. So we prayed and said, Lord, if Debbie's going to stop working as much and start doing the kids, I need to make more money. I really need a job that has health insurance and making more money. That's what we prayed. I also felt like I didn't want to be one of those owners of the business that said, I can't work for somebody else anymore. I didn't want to have an ego, so I humbled myself, Lord. I will do whatever you ask me to do. And 2 weeks later, I got a phone call out of the blue. Somebody looking for a tech, and they had heard my name from one of my clients, and they offered me a job. And it was making the exact money I would need to cover Debbie going to part-time. And they had health insurance. So about a year later, after our third child, she didn't want to work anymore to do full-time homeschooling with the kids. And we prayed again, Lord, if that's your will for our life, you need to provide me with a better job that covers both of our incomes and better insurance, because now I have, more things to deal with. A couple weeks later, I got a call from one of my clients, and they said to me, we want to bring you on full time and have you run our full IT shop. It was the exact money I needed to cover Debbie's full wage, and the insurance was exactly what we needed to cover Nathan and all the needs that we had as a family. And so the valuable lesson that I started to learn when it came to God is that blessing comes after obedience. If he's asking you to do something, you got to be obedient to it before he's going to help you out of it. And so God had wanted to be involved in my life, in all my decision-making processes, and I was finally living that out and letting him help. I'd been working there about 2 years when the recession hit. This is back in 2008. I had a good job, a really high-paying job in the worst economic times of our lifetime. And our church, Kensington, decided to launch a national campus in Orlando, and my brother was going to be the pastor. And we said, okay, Lord, if do you want us to go down to Florida? And we, God had really answered, yes, we want you down. He wants us down in Florida. And we decided to move down here to help him start the church. Now, you have to picture this as the worst economic times of our lifetime. I had 3 children, a 4th on the way, really good paying job, and I upped and moved to Florida because I felt like God was asking me to. I had enough money for 3 months of rent, and I had a place to live and no God. So it definitely is a step of faith. People thought I was crazy, and many people tried to talk me out of it, but when we moved down here, within a month, I had a job making the exact same money I was making in Michigan. Once again, God showed up, and the blessing of it comes after obedience was affirmed. And so, at this point in my life, Debbie and I had 5 kids. God was blessing me. I was leading the drama ministry at our church. I was doing announcements, and on the outward appearance, everything was good. I had everything. I had a good wife, a good job, beautiful family. I was serving at the church. But I was still struggling with alcohol abuse, and I was drinking beers every day, and I had a lot of anger. See, the only model I had growing up was yell louder and yell loudest, and force people to do what you want. That's all I knew. And I remember getting in a fight with Debbie one day, and I called her a name that I shouldn't have. She said, you need to do something about your anger, is what she said. And swimming in denial, I said, I don't need any recovery. I don't have an anger problem, and I slammed the door behind me. That's when the Holy Spirit nudged me and said, hey, you have an anger problem. I know I have an anger problem. And my mother was telling me about this thing called Celebrate Recovery out in Claremont. And she knew I wasn't happy. She knew I needed help. And so I agreed to participate in a 12-step study. And I'm thinking, the step study would start whenever they get enough people. I know the routine, right? You got to get enough people to do it. You got to have a leader, and you got to have enough men that are going to admit they have enough problems to do a structure. So I thought I had plenty of time. And that was on a Monday night that I agreed that I would do CR. So that Wednesday, when I was introducing myself to my new stepbrothers, I was still in denial about many things in my life. I'd only come there for anger. It's the only problem I had. But as I sat there listening to everyone's story, and they went around the table, I realized I had a lot more than just anger problems in my life. And the most important step for me was the step across the parking lot to admit that I had an issue, and then getting accountability partners. I realized that I struggled with pornography, sexual addiction, drug and alcohol abuse, and I had rage. And I think the most important step for me was step 4 as I did my spiritual inventory. I started to write down the things that I was telling you about today, and how messed up my past had been, and how messed up the choices I made were. But as I was completing the step study, something else started to change in my life. I would be sitting out there in Claremont, we'd be open share group, and I'd be hearing people share their week and share their check-ins. And my heart started to break for them. And I didn't know what was going on. I would literally start crying when someone was sharing their pain, sharing their stories. I felt their pain. I said, God, what is this? What is going on? Like, I'm a compassionate dude, but this is ridiculous. Like, what am I feeling right now for these people? And I clearly felt that God was telling me, this is how I feel for them. This is how I see them. This is my heart for them. And it's at that point that I realized that God was calling me into this recovery ministry. One of my life verses after this has been 1 Corinthians 10:13, where it says, "No temptation has seized you except what is common to man. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, He will also provide a way out for you so that you can stand up under it." And so for the newcomer, the people that are working their recoveries or wanting to work the recoveries, the recovery journey is not easy. This is not an easy road to walk. There's things that are extremely hard. But if you work your steps, if you'll go through your forgiveness, if you'll go through your amends, if you will do your inventory, Satan cannot hold anything against you anymore because you're known. You're known to other people. And there's none of those lies can hold on you anymore. You can look at the inventory and you can say, that's who I was. That's not who I am. With the help of Jesus. And if you take off the mask and you work the program, you can have freedom from your past. You can have freedom from the damage that was done. You have to be willing to walk through it. I have found freedom from my past. I was willing to let God into my life. And I was freed from the condemnation from Satan in my life. And so it's with my head held high that I tell you that my name is Keith Valentine. I'm a child of God. And I celebrate recovery from rage, addiction, and pornography. Let me pray. Lord, we just thank you. We thank you that you are the God who was, the God that is, and will always be, Lord. That you just want us to be in relationship with you. That you just want us to release our life to you and have your will accomplished in our life. I thank you for everyone that's here tonight. I ask you to bless them. I ask you to touch their lives in ways that is personal to them, that they know you're here. We just thank you.